Hi, Paul Ahlgren, Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. That means that normally I work with the partner ecosystem and providing technical support for them for partners like foreseeti. And originally this presentation was a bit on how to architect security in AWS, but it had drifted when we came into this session. So we will talk a little bit on more of where are AWS, the areas we're looking at when we create all the services that we provide to customers in the security area. And so let's start with while you can have a look at the pictures of all the sales pitch numbers and so on. We can talk a little bit on that. Very early on, AWS realized that security was the main thing when you build services in the cloud. And every time we create a service today, we always start with the security, and that's easy to say, but the thing is that unless you know exactly how the product or service will be secured, how it's going to interact with all the other services, before you know that, you're not allowed to write a single line of code. So we always start with how the service will fit into the security ecosystem of AWS. And we've been around for 14 years and have still a market share of a little bit over 50% of the cloud market. We no longer say that there is anything called the private cloud. Today we only talk about cloud or on-premise, because we think that the whole idea around the cloud is that the services should be more or less limitless when it comes to capacity for individual users. So we have stopped talking about the public cloud and the private cloud. We just talk about the cloud these days. We have also a number of data centers around the world, somewhere between 200 and 250 today. That's not an official number. Instead, we talk about regions and availability zones. And the regions we have, and what we call regions, are not what Google and Microsoft call regions. They're different concepts. And our concept is that a region is clusters of data centers which are situated in one specific country. So we have 22 of these around the world today, another 4 coming online in the next year or so. And the idea with the region is that it is always situated in the country, and we do not move data outside the country. So a customer that places data in a region know that it will stay there. So if you place it in the Swedish region, it will stay in Sweden. If you place it in the Frankfurt region, it will stay in Germany, and so on. There is a few exceptions to know about this. They're mentioned in our terms and conditions, but some of the AI services need data to be able to create the models. But it's possible to opt out, but the customers have to actively opt out from building those models. And that means that they will not be able to get a model that is suited for them specifically. They will use standard models. But we are today in 22 different places around the world. And if you wonder about the size of these things, we can say that North Virginia, which is the biggest one, it's about 40 data centers, each with a capacity on about 30 megawatts, which means that it's about 40 cities with 30 to 40,000 people in it. When it comes to energy consumption, that is how we measure size on the data centers. So it's quite a big infrastructure. But if we have a look on what we do in when it comes to the security services at AWS, the thing is that we have, I will do this, I prefer to have the full picture. The thing is that all in all, we offer more than 50 different services to help you or others to create secure environments in AWS. And that goes everything from the identity and access management, the basic tools to identify the users and authorize and authenticate them, and also looking at things that everything is well architected when it comes to a number of security things with the well architected tool, which we talk about 5 pillars at AWS, where security is one of them, and then optimization is one, and operational excellence is another, where you can go through the workloads and see to it that you have designed correctly. And securiCAD Vanguard can be considered a more advanced on the security pillar of looking into how you have designed your security, even though we're looking into actually more of the actual platform, and then Vanguard, securiCAD Vanguard is looking at the workload of the application. But we have more than 50 different services, and some of them are quite interesting today. Because what I'm going to talk about is that I'm going to talk a little bit about the 3 areas where we put in the most effort at the moment when it comes to the security services. We see that we have services in all of these different areas, and we work very hard, and config were mentioned before. It's not only for extracting calls and looking at configurations. Config's main purpose is that it can actually react on changes in configuration in real time. So a very common use case is that you use config to check if anyone changes, for instance, a security group for a machine. And if they do, you can immediately have a look, for instance, into your ticketing system, see if there is an open ticket, and that the user that tries to access the machine actually has access. And if they don't, you can remediate and close down, kill that security group, and report to security, for instance. So the config is an interesting tool where you can work with continuous security. And I think that is coming from the bank world where I come from, where we did a lot of monitoring, but not very much of acting. It's very interesting with the new modern tools where you can actually react in real time, and using tools like lambdas to mitigate security threats immediately when they happen. And Eric also mentioned, for instance, Amazon Macy, which you see in the Detect area. And the Detect area is really interesting because there we start to use machine learning. And machine learning is the new black for the cloud services, in that many services that we build today make use of machine learning, not so that the customer has to know machine learning, but we make use of machine learning to help the customer do a better job. And all of the services, not Inspector, but the Security Hub, Macy, and Guard Duty that you see there in Detect, they are all based on machine learning. So Macy is a service which currently can look at a bucket. A bucket is where you store files if you're not working with AWS. And it can look into a bucket and make assumptions on personal identifiable information. It can recognize names, addresses, national identification number, phone numbers, etc., and give a statement about the file if it's having this kind of information in it or not, we're actually working on, and it's not official, so I shouldn't say it, but I do it anyway, that we're actually looking in it now, so that you will be able to place it in workflows, so that you can take a single file and pass it through, and then you can, for instance, check if you have to do things with the file to be GDPR compliant, if it's personal information in it, or if it's not, you can take a less secure route for your application. So this is one of the things that we're looking into, using this kind of technology so it can be used in automated flow. Guard Duty is another product. I'm coming back to that one. I remember I have it later on, so I will come back to that one. But we have all these products that helping customers keeping the environment secure. And if we have securiCAD Vanguard, for instance, that looking in for things before you deploy them, so that you can mitigate the threats that you have. Then we have, for instance, a product called Amazon Detector, which you see there on Investigate, which is that you can use when, sorry to say, something has happened and you have to do forensic work. It collects logs and it collects other information that you can use to determine the root cause on if you have had a security problem. So, and it's also using machine learning. So it's an interesting tool to be in that other end, where securiCAD Vanguard should help you be sure that you don't put anything that can pose a security threat out there. But if something has happened, you can use Detective to find out what has happened in detail, so that you can mitigate it later on. But so another thing we normally talk a lot about is our compliance work, and this is actually my specialty. I work mostly with compliance issues. And the thing is that today we are compliant with more than 210, I think, different security frameworks and standards in the security area. And what does this mean? Well, the thing is that we have, every year we have about 3,000 third-party audits made in our data centers to make sure that we comply to a number of these. And these are, many of these security standards are so that we can guarantee that we do not touch customer data, that we do not access it, and also that if you handle your data when it comes to how you do with your encryption keys, etc., how we handle these. And if you look at the screen I have here, there are a number of standards, and if you're into this area, you know that some of these are only valid in some countries, like FIPS, for instance, that tells you how to handle the cryptographic material. That is only valid in the US. But the thing is that we work exactly the same way in every data center around the world. So even though FIPS is only valid in the US, we are here in Sweden doing it exactly the same way, even though that we cannot get certified for it here in Sweden. But we do everything the same way all over the world, so that you know that you have the same exact standard independently of where you put your workload. And if we look at three areas where we do a lot of work currently, we have for many years looked at the virtualization. I mean, that's the bread and butter of AWS. And what we have done is we started in 2013. And if we look how we do it today, the thing is that we do not do virtualization in software. We do it in hardware. And we have made the virtualization in a way so that we cannot access the customer's machines. We cannot access the memory to make it much more secure, because of the simple reason that we try to mitigate insider threat. So we have done everything we can to ensure that we cannot get to customer data, even if we would like to. And the newest step when it comes to the virtualization is to use the technology that we have been using, and we have created something that was presented at the last big conference that we have every year in Las Vegas called the reInvent, where we present all the big news for the year to come. And the latest one in the virtualization space is something called the Nitro enclaves. And the Nitro enclaves is really interesting if you're into really secure environments where you have very, very sensitive data, which you would have not unencrypted even when you're working with the data. And what we have done to help our customers is that from an EC2 instance, a virtual machine, you can create another virtual machine that is very restricted. It doesn't have any keyboards, it doesn't have any IO. Even if you have admin access on the instance A in this picture, you will not be able to do anything in the enclave. You can put code in there that can be signed and everything, so that you're sure that you're actually doing what it's supposed to do. But the idea with this one is that you can put sensitive data encrypted into the enclave. Nobody can look at it. We cannot look at it. You cannot look at it. It can be calculated in there, so you can decrypt it. You can calculate what you need to do, and then you encrypt the data again and pass it out of the enclave. And the idea with this one is that so that you can ensure that there is no human that can actually go in there and have a look on what you're doing. And I think that is a pretty interesting take on how to work with virtualization. And it's going to be interesting. It's still in preview. And the interesting thing which people don't know about is that people working at AWS, we are the last to get all the new stuff. So I haven't been able to work with this one, but I'm really looking forward for it when it will be available even for us. Anyway. And the other area, I've already started to talk about this, but the other area where things are happening, a lot of things are happening, is machine learning. And machine learning is very hot everywhere, but we really try to use it to improve the value of the products that we provide. And GuardDuty is one of these products where it looks for things like, once again, it's one of these pictures I would like to have. I don't like this I wanted to have it like that. So GuardDuty is one of these products that looks for anomalies in the logs. It looks at the network traffic, it looks at instance traffic and other things, and it can look for unusual traffic patterns. Suddenly volume is changing, using other ports. Someone is suddenly starting to do things at the wrong time of the day and other things. And with GuardDuty, it can look and find these anomalies. It can send an alarm, and you can act on the alarm either by doing the traditional sending an alarm to the security responsibles, or you can actually act doing things like isolating the machine that has this strange behavior and so on. So it's a very good tool, because when I was working at Skandia Banken, where I was the chief solution architect, we did all this collection of data, but the problem was to monitor the data. And we used Splunk, which is a very good product, of course. The problem was we had, this was a couple of years ago, we had to write all these checks ourselves, and GuardDuty helps you by providing you with a number of different checks that it does on your behalf to help you keep the environment secure. And this is a good example on how how machine learning is moving in to help and provide better value. Also, this is also one of the big areas where machine learning really shines, and that is when you have the volumes. We're talking millions of log records a day, and when you have a product like GuardDuty, it will be able to make sense and find those, well, wrong word, but the golden nuggets that you have to have a look at. It can find it for you, which is very hard when you simply drown in data. So this is typically where machine learning really shines for you. And I was also talking about Detective, which are using GuardDuty and the VPC flow logs, that's the network traffic, and the CloudTrail logs, which are the API calls. Good to know if you don't work with AWS is that you can only talk to the services through API calls, and every API call is logged. And this means also that if we do something in that affects an environment, you can actually see what has been done, because the API calls are logged and you can see them in CloudTrail, and you can monitor them and you can analyze them and act upon them. And Detective is using that data plus a few other things, and also it can integrate, as it says, with different partner security products to ensure that you can really have a look after and finding the root cause, for instance, when you had an attack, on what happened and where it came from and when it started, etc., etc. We're also looking into one other thing. This is partly in the security space, but more on actually practical work. And the thing is that we're also looking into using what we have learned as a company. Amazon and AWS isn't really the same thing, but Amazon is providing us with a lot of the knowledge they have built up in different areas in the last couple of years. So last year, for instance, we came out with a product called Forecast, which used the supply chain management algorithms that Amazon had used for running their fulfillment centers, and made them and sales forecasting and making them available for customers. And the fraud detector is the same thing. Amazon is pretty good on fraud detection when it comes to payments. And now we're coming out with a product called the Amazon Fraud Detector, where those algorithms are now provided to customers so that they can use these to put into their payment workflows and ensure that you get an early detection on these kind of problems. So it's not security per se, but it's really helping when you're working in this area of securing your production data. And the last area I'm going to talk about is governance. And the governance area, the thing is that the AWS environments today are often, and you will see if you use, for instance, foreseeti's products, which has a very good visualization on the environments, you will find out how complex your environments are. And our customers, they see that we have all these amazing security tools, but it's very hard to make real good use of them because it's too complex. And traditionally, this has been partners that have been helping them doing this, but we have started to create products that take what we have learned, to put the best practices in use, and then helping the customers do the security governance. Anyone that's been using these would know that, yes, that sounds very nice. We do have some work to make them really where they should be, but it's a good start, and helping setting up security guardrails and other things. So for instance, we have presented last year a product called Control Tower, and Control Tower is doing one of the most important tasks when you start your AWS environment, and that is creating a secure landing zone. This has traditionally been done by partners that have been helping customers setting up a number of accounts and setting up the security guardrails on those accounts. But now it's possible to do that with the help of Control Tower. It's not available here in Sweden yet. It's the limitation on Control Tower is that the guardrails are only set up in the region where these accounts are actually created. And people working with AWS knows that accounts are not region bound, as we call them, but Control Tower makes it region bound. So it's a little trade-off made. But the thing is that the idea is to give these governance tools, and I see also securiCAD Vanguard as a part of these governance tools to ensure that you have an environment which you can trust. And if you look at Control Tower, it's a few of these things. Is that it sets up the guardrails for the policy management, and it also creates an account factory, because it's not, if you're running in an AWS environment today, and if you have any kind of size, it's not that you have one or two accounts. Customers like Klarna and Scania and others, they have hundreds of accounts, and Control Tower is helping with having an account factory so that you can stamp up new accounts very easily and still be secured and connected to the other accounts, and see to it that you don't open up too much from a security point of view and other things. So Control Tower is an important tool to get started on AWS if you are going to do any kind of serious production environments. And then we have what we call the Security Hub, and the Security Hub is another one of these tools where we take the tools we have and then we put another layer on top of it. And Security Hub, if Control Tower gets all the basic guardrails in place, Security Hub is put on top of it, and taking all of the machine learning tools and other things that I've talked about, and see to it that you use them correctly in the different accounts. And this is also a thing that has taken a lot of time to put up, but with Security Hub, this is a process that goes much, much faster than before. And that is what we try to do very hard, is to simplify. And I normally say that security on AWS is and in the cloud is so easy today, and you get so much help that you really do not have an argument for not doing it. So, and I think we will see, especially in these two last areas, you will see a further development from AWS to get better and easier governance, because the environments gets more and more complex for every year. And you will also see more and more products that use the machine learning to ensure that you don't get drowned by data. And I think we'll stop there for today. So Jocke, you had, I think I'll jump this one and go to that one. So you had, I presume you have some.
There were some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
First one, if the data stays locally, how do you manage replication?
Well, that's up to the customer. I mean, we do not move data. The thing is that the region in AWS, that is at least 3 different data centers. So normally a file, if you store it in S3, for instance, are split it into 64 kilobit chunks, or kilobyte chunks. And each of those chunks are spread out on in 10 or 20 copies. So there are copies in every data center, in every region of the data center, because every data center has several regions. And that means that normally everything is secure, but if so that you have copies of it, the idea is that it should be principally impossible to lose files. But if you need to copy it somewhere else, it has to be initiated by the customer. We don't do that. But there are, of course, services and things on how to do this, but we do not move the data.
Second one was, and I know you can't answer this fully, as you take security very seriously. But what's on the agenda forward?
That's hard to say. As first of all, I've already did a few of them, yeah. But normally we're not allowed to talk about anything that is not already presented. But what we will see is the big thing is machine learning to get this view on that you don't drown in data. And I mean, this is the same thing that you've been looking into on there are so many ways of threatening an application, and what securiCAD does is to try to provide well, almost machine learning wise, a way of saying that okay, you have 5,000 data points. How are you going to make sure that it's the 3 that you have to mitigate? And this is what your product does. And this is what we will do with the base platforms in the coming years. We will work a lot with machine learning to ensure that you don't drown, so that you can really act on the important things. And well, as you say, normally when you present this, that we start to look at lists, and the idea is to get rid of those lists and act on things that are important instead.
Let's see. Anything else in the chat here? Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise it's well, I think people should try this product. The thing I really like, it sounds like I'm bored by this, guys, but I do like this product. And one of the things I really like is this, on how you have realized that the automation of the cloud is so important, so that you have this product that you can put it into the build pipelines. So that you can do these tests as a part of the build before you go to deployment. And you mentioned it very short. Eric mentioned it very shortly, but I think that's a very important point, because the thing is that everything has to be automated today, and it's very nice to have this tool where you can actually visualize and you can see it. But the thing, if it's really going to be operational in the cloud and with the volumes and the number of applications people are going to have, you have to have that kind of functionality. And so I think it's very good that you have that from the start. And it's really forward-looking to look into this, because everything in the cloud has to be automated.